is a Fox News alert. Donald Trump's campaign manager charged with allegedly assaulting a female reporter earlier this month. This is Outnumbered. I'm Andrea Tantaros, and here with us today, Sandra Smith, Democratic strategist Julie Roginsky, National Review reporter Katherine Timpf, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the perfect one lucky guy for today's lead story, Judge Alex Ferrer, right up from Florida. And Judge, you are outnumbered. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Well, the breaking news fits right into your area of expertise, so we're going to get to it. Donald Trump's campaign manager now going to have to answer in court. Kollege Lewandowski has been charged with allegedly grabbing a former Breitbart reporter when she tried to ask Trump a question after a rally in Florida earlier this month. In a statement, Trump says Lewandowski is absolutely innocent and will enter a plea of not guilty. Judge Alex, what do you think about this? This is just breaking now, but this story has been in the press since it took place on March 8th. So is there a chance that he could go to jail over this?
No, I don't think so, unless he's got tremendous amount of priors of doing this to everybody. No.
Which he does not.
It's a simple battery. It's a very low-level offense. If he's proven guilty, actually probably won't go to trial. Probably what will happen is they'll offer him pretrial diversion or pretrial intervention, which is a program to avoid trial. He'll plead no contest, so he's not admitting any guilt, and they'll put him in this program, maybe make him do an anger management course or something, and then the case will simply go away.
How important is evidence in a case like this versus he said, she said?
Well, evidence is important in every case, regardless of the case like this. I mean, in this case, I believe
there's a video. It's vague in the video what happened.
If there hadn't been a video, the case never would have been brought because it's such a low-level crime. And
there
so you've got him saying,
so we're looking at this. Excuse me, Judge.
Sure.
This is the video that has been circulating around the internet. Of course, will be probably submitted as evidence. And there's been a back and forth over whether or not something did in fact happen. I mean, a lot of people who were there are saying, yes, it did happen, and others saying no. I mean, there's been this back and forth. Are you confident, though, Judge? I mean, once in front of a court, they're going to settle this out.
In all likelihood, yes. I mean, unless he's so adamant, he has to accept a plea voluntarily. They can't force him to. So if he says absolutely not, I'm going to trial, the case is going to trial. I just don't see him wanting to take it to trial, and I don't see them wanting to push it to trial.
Right, exactly.
But that's what's so interesting about this from a legal standpoint. You said no contest means he doesn't acknowledge guilt. Of course, from a political standpoint, no contest means no contest. I'm not contesting the underlying allegation here, which is that I assaulted a woman. And for the Trump campaign, regardless of whether he's guilty of this or not legally, for the Trump campaign, who obviously have problems with their attitude towards women, a lot of people believe, including the vast majority of women, including Republican women, this is not helpful.
No, but they can delay it. See, the thing is that it's not going to go to trial next week. If they're smart, what they'll do is they'll delay this until it's no longer a factor in the election, and then he can plead no contest.
He can't say or even allude that he might have been guilty of this, especially with the way he came storming out saying that she was delusional. There's no way he can do anything but kind of wait or say, hey, I'm not guilty, and yeah, you don't want a trial for this. They really want this to go away.
And you've heard, Kat, you've heard some people also, I mean, not quoting Twitter, but this back and forth has been happening again since March 8th.
Yeah.
And if you're a Trump supporter, you can read their philosophy, which is online everywhere, and they're saying, you know, she was out of line, she was trying to grab Mr. Trump, she was shouting a question, he was well within his rights. I mean, how does this affect, in the court of public opinion, someone like a Donald Trump?
I think that that's already been determined. I don't think whether or not he actually faces any legal consequences will matter. Because, Ken, you were saying there's nothing really serious legally that can happen to him. The fact that it happened, that people have the video, people have already kind of made up their minds about which camp they're in.
And the people who support Trump are gonna side with the campaign manager and say she was out of line, and the people who don't like Trump are going to say it's another example of the bullying tactics, et cetera, et cetera.
Battery is a first-degree misdemeanor. I'm sorry, I'm just reading through some of the specifics here in the timeline of this case. So as far as the penalty that he could face for something like this.
Well, the maximum penalty for a battery in the state of Florida is up to a year in jail. But somebody with no priors and a battery of this level, you know, I mean, battery is, you know, like he grabs her arm, that's a battery. But battery is also he punches her in the face.
Is that battery?
They're both batteries.
You just assaulted me right now on national television. I just want to say, you know, I'm going to press charges.
And there's video of it.
I know, you're really in trouble. Wow.
So he could face up to a year in jail, but for a first-time offense and a battery of this nature, if it actually went to trial and he got convicted, I don't think he'd even do jail time. If he did, it would be a very minimal amount. They'd probably put him on probation.
I was looking at Donald Trump's Twitter account, Andrea, to see if there was any response from him on this. Not anything specific that I can see in the last couple hours. would you advise him to stay silent, Donald Trump himself, to stay silent on the matter?
Yeah, I would tell Donald Trump to say, you know what, let the legal process deal with it. I don't, from my understanding, there's nothing here, and let it work its way out.
It almost keeps them from having to answer any more questions about it. They
Yeah,
can now just say, hey, well, they're dealing with it. The law is doing it.
Because otherwise he's playing right into the whole anti-woman thing.
But he has had his campaign managers back in past. Every single time he has the backs of his staff, and you can see they seemingly have his. As far as his supporters, though, I don't think this is going to, as Judge Alice mentioned, I don't think this is going to hurt Donald Trump. I don't think this is going to affect him in Pennsylvania. I think if you like him, as the polls show, you made a decision that you like him early on, and you stick with it, and nothing will deter your support of that candidate.
Well, it's just another data point for both sides. The data point for the people that don't like Donald Trump is he has a culture not only of himself, but of people around him mistreating women. If you like Donald Trump, yet one more person is being victimized. What I think is interesting about this is the people who think that Corey Lewandowski is somehow being unfairly maligned or unfairly victimized. He's unfairly maligned or unfairly victimized, according to them, by Michelle Fields, who we all know, we've all worked with. Michelle Fields is no liberal, you know, feminist. I mean, Michelle Fields is a woman who worked for Breitbart, an organization that was very, very friendly, continues to be friendly to Donald Trump. You know, without saying whether she's right or wrong in this, I certainly wasn't there, but this is no conspiracy to get Donald Trump. And so I think that's a data point as well for people who are on the fence. But there are, as you said, Kat, so few people on the fence about this. People have made up their minds. And, you know, they believe what they believe. Either they see this in the video. I actually have a friend who was there very close to the action. He claims he saw nothing. I look at a video and I see something different. So I think it's almost like a Rashomon
and that's the point I want to hit on, Judge, is because we all in the court of public opinion have watched this thing play out. And there's a number of people who were there who said, this was a big nothing burger. Nothing occurred. She blew this out of proportion. So finally, this is going to be settled, we hope.
Yes, I think it will. And typically, somebody grabs you by the arm. Nobody usually brings battery charges based on just being grabbed by the arm.
Trying to grab my arm.
On the other, yes, I'm trying to get two people.
This is now a second offense, right? This is no longer.
It's not going to go easy for me. But I was reading that she claimed that she had bruises, and she took pictures of bruises. So if he grabbed her roughly enough to leave bruises, that is a significant issue.
And if that's submitted in court, the judge is going to look at that and say,
you know, the punishment should fit the crime. And maybe it won't be a pretrial intervention program. Maybe it will be at least a probation, maybe some jail time.
Is it at the judge's discretion? How does that work?
No, the pretrial intervention is offered by the state attorney. They determine whether somebody is appropriate for the program, because it's a program that takes you out of the criminal prosecution. And if you successfully complete it, they drop the case. Got it. He actually wouldn't, I misspoke, he actually wouldn't have to plead no contest. They put you in the program, and you drop, if you complete it, they drop the case as if it never existed. And that's the best outcome for him. But if he goes through to a plea where he actually pleads no contest, then the case did exist.
But he would have to concede that he did something wrong in order to take this pretrial intervention.
Sometimes the state attorneys don't require him to concede anything. They just say, we're going to offer him pretrial intervention. He goes through the program. At the end, they null-pros the case, and it's over and done with.
Do you know anything about his representation, Lewandowski, down in Florida? Scott Richardson of the law office of Scott and Richardson?
I don't know him in person, no.
Okay.
Sandra, what about the other candidates? Because I have to imagine if you're Ted Cruz's camp today, you're waiting to make hay of this. I mean, a lot of times you see other candidates jump on board. I would imagine, Julie, that Democrats are saying, okay, we're going to throw this at Donald Trump as well, if you're Hillary Clinton.
You know, of all the things that Donald Trump himself has done, I think this is at the low end of the totem pole with respect to women. This is Corey Lewandowski. Really, you can't pin this on Donald Trump. If this were the only thing that happened in Trump world, of course, Democrats would be all over it. But there's so many things that Donald Trump himself has said towards women and about women that Democrats can quote at will, that I think in this case you really should let the legal process play out. Listen, I'm certainly not a fan of Corey Lewandowski. I happen to know and like Michelle Fields. I sympathize with her. But having said that, he is innocent until proven guilty, and I think anybody would be crazy to allege that he did something until the legal process plays itself out.
Crazy, but we know that candidates are crazy. Do we not, Kat? I mean, this is assuming that everybody running for president right now is completely normal, which is not true whatsoever.
Not at all. You can't run for president and be normal now because it's too boring. Everybody wants to watch interesting things happen, or ever. Yeah, it gives them an excuse to not have to talk about it, too. Like, hey, it's being dealt with. I think that could almost be a positive thing that he's in the legal system now, because he's like, I don't have to do anything, I guess. You know, they're taking care of it, and I'm going to build the wall, and then whatever else he wants to talk about instead.
Kind of takes stuff off the burner.
And Judge, could you argue that this is now out of the way, at least, because it does give them an opportunity to say, okay, a court's handling this issue, we're going to move forward, we're going to talk about the issues. I mean, Trump, again, he has had the back of his campaign manager rightfully for a long time. I mean, he works for him. He was right there. He says nothing happened. I absolutely support him. He didn't do anything wrong. And so now he can just move forward.
Yeah,
from a PR perspective.
It does give him cover, if that's what you're saying. Yes, it does give him cover because it allows him to pass it off to the legal system and say, let it run its course. I have confidence in my campaign manager. I don't believe it's going to lead to anything, so let it run its course, and he can take it off the plate. But unlike what you were saying, Julie, I called you Judy. Unlike what Julie was saying.
That's the woman you assaulted.
The people who don't like Trump are still going to use it. Yes, they have a lot of ammunition, but what they're going to say is he's created this culture. Look at it. It permeates everything around him. He's got the guy at the other rally that grabbed the other protester by the shirt, and they're going to say he's created this atmosphere, and this is the atmosphere he's going to bring to the White House.
They will, and but again, as I said, there's so many things that Donald Trump himself has done. So I think if I were running a campaign against Donald Trump, you just use his own words against him. You don't have to go to Corey Lewandowski. It is a culture that he has created, if in fact Corey Lewandowski is guilty, which I still say, maybe I'm the minority here, until we figure out what exactly happened to the courts do.
And I should get back in, while Trump hasn't said anything the past few hours, his camp put out a statement, as you led in with Andrea, maintaining that Corey is absolutely innocent, is the Trump campaign's response.
Before we move on, Julie, what specifically did your friend say? Who was there and who witnessed the entire thing?
He said he didn't see anything. Then again, he's also a very close friend of the Trump family, and so of course, you know, he may be predisposed to see. As I said, this is a Rashomon tape to me. People who want to see something,
well, if she really has bruises, then you have to think, did she gave herself the bruises? I don't think she's the type of person to do that.
No. Listen, as I said,
might have just been a rough grab.
Speaking for myself personally, I've worked with her, not closely, obviously here at Fox. She's a lovely woman. I don't know the details of this whatsoever. I think it'd be crazy to prejudge. But she does not strike me somebody who would make something up wholesale or do something this crazy.
And pursue it to the
pursue it to the degree that she would, of course. I don't think she would at all.
And witnesses will be called, right, Judge?
Whatever they can find, especially if they have video. Video, you know, speaks volumes.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to keep our eyes on this story. Of course, that is breaking and unfolding today. Moving on, the FBI says that it now has successfully unlocked the San Bernardino gunman's iPhone without Apple's help. Oh, would you look at that? They could do it all along. But what does that mean for Americans' privacy? And what does it mean for future cases? Well, we've got the judge here to tell us. Up next.
Thanks, but no thanks. In an epic tug of war over privacy rights, the FBI says it's been able to hack into the iPhone used by one of the San Bernardino terrorists without help from Apple. The Justice Department dropping its legal fight against the tech giant, as the FBI says it was able to access the data with the help of a third party. In response, Apple saying, quote, "This case should never have been brought. We will continue to help law enforcement with their investigations, as we have done all along, and we will continue to increase the security of our products as the threats and attacks on our data become more frequent and more sophisticated." But while this case may be over, the constitutional and privacy issues it raises are not. Many legal experts say this is just kicking the can down the road, and that eventually Congress may have to step in.
Will Congress require the companies to basically preserve a window of vulnerability in the technology, what some people call the back door? So very much that is the next big debate, which is not going to be about one phone. It's going to be about all phones, all computers.
All right, so here's my big question on this. Can Apple now legally request from the government for them to release how they hacked into this phone?
Well, yeah, they can certainly request it. I don't know if the government's going to be happy to play ball with them after they didn't help the government out.
Exactly.
See, there's no legal requirement that the government share information with them or anything like that. What happened was there was a policy between the government and tech companies that if the government found a security weakness, they would typically share it with the tech companies. The purpose being to close security weaknesses so hackers aren't cracking into our bank accounts and all these other.
But you agree, what a tangled web this has become, because now the government's in a position where they could significantly help out Apple, because the most important part of that statement that they released, Julie, was they're now going to build their background and their security. They're going to make those devices even more secure and safe to prevent this.
I mean, it's really kind of unbelievable chutzpah, right? First they ask Apple to help them do this. The Apple says no way. Then Apple all of a sudden says, wait a second, you figured out how to do this?
How'd you do
help
that?
us prevent you from doing this.
I want them to know how. I don't want people hacking in my iPhone.
And so that to me is but that's what's so fascinating. Essentially, what Apple is asking is the government to help them create a device that the government would no longer in the future be able to help them
I think that's a great idea.
I mean, it's unbelievable. It just takes such an amount of chutzpah. It's incredible.
From a legal standpoint, I think that Apple was more likely to win the appeal than the government was.
Right.
I think that constitutionally requiring a private company to build something, people said, oh, it's like just you have a warrant and making somebody open a door. No, this was you have a warrant and you say, I want you to give me a key that opens every lock in the world. That's a big difference.
Go back to the government's argument, Andrea, and the government's argument was you should do anything you can as a private company to help us solve a crime. But now if the government has the ability to hack into the phone, are they going to help local law enforcement around the country that has been asking the government to help hack into phones to solve crimes?
We're already talking about that, drug crimes and those kinds of things. And that's what's dangerous about this. It's impossible to create a program where you can just hack into one phone that can't be used for other phones. If it was just about one phone, there wouldn't be an argument here. It's about the fact that it's for all the phones. It's about the legal precedent.
But what Apple could have done for that one phone is could have said, look, we don't want this to develop a key because you can't keep things secret. They get out. So then terrorists have keys and they can hack into government phones and things like this. So Apple should have said, give us the phone. We'll maintain chain of custody. We will unlock it for you and we will give it back to you.
What do you think, Andrea? Did Apple make a mistake here?
No. And why are we focusing on Apple? Apple did absolutely the right thing. We are forgetting that the FBI essentially lied to us. They said they couldn't get into the phone. This is the story today. The Obama administration and the FBI came out and said, we have this cell phone that they screwed up initially. Remember, it was the FBI.
Hold on, but Andrea, we don't know by what means the government went about hacking into this phone. Word is that they tapped some foreign source to hack into this phone. Do we really want that for our private companies?
You're missing the biggest point. The FBI, the reason the FBI needed help getting into this phone is because they're the ones that reset the password and locked themselves out of the phone in the first place. It was an FBI error that did it.
But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't still ask Apple for help in getting in.
Why? If you're Apple, hang on a minute. If you're Apple, you're saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You guys can break into this phone. You break into phones all the time with forced breaks all the time. Apple knew that. So they're saying, why are we going to compromise our security, write code for a product that's ours? Why would they write code to hack into their own product? It never made sense to begin with. Apple has handled this brilliantly and beautifully, and this all from the get-go was just a scheme by the administration to end all encrypted technologies. Now, the administration is going to have to find a whole new scheme to figure out how to hack into encrypted technology.
And I have to say,
it's about privacy. It's much bigger than what we're talking about on this couch.
I agree largely with a lot of what you said, because to me, from day one, that was so, it made completely no sense. How is it that the United States government and all of our collected intelligence agencies, allegedly the best in the world, are not able to hack into this phone?
I would love to keep this conversation going.
Outnumbered overtime.
Overtime. We'll get back to it. All right, staggering new numbers on the spread of terrorism worldwide and how much more lethal terrorists have become in just the past 5 years, and it's only getting worse. Is the Obama administration doing enough to fight this growing threat? Plus, Hillary Clinton blasting Republicans for not meeting with President Obama's Supreme Court nominee. But could we be seeing some cracks in the GOP wall of resistance?
In the wake of the terror attacks in Brussels and Paris, an alarming new report details the growing threat from radical Islamists around the world. The nonprofit Investigative Project on Terrorism says that an average of nearly 30,000 people per year have been killed by terrorists over the past 5 years. That's a nearly 800% increase. The report finds two disturbing trends. More attacks are happening, and they tend to be deadlier, with Islamists spreading to more countries than ever before. And it's not just ISIS, but Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda, far from being on the run, as the Obama administration has said in the past. So, Julie, I want to go to you first on this, because according to this report, our suspicions that terror, of course, is on the rise, didn't realize an 800% increase. But a completely different storyline than we hear what's coming out of the White House, that we're winning the war on terror, that groups like ISIS have been contained. So why one side saying one thing and the other side saying another?
Well, this group in particular that put out the study has some credibility issues, but I'll leave that aside. Obviously, terrorism is increasing. We see it all in the news reports every day. I don't know about these specific numbers as to whether they're accurate or not. I will say this. Look, we have one of two choices, right? And we have to really look at this seriously. We've talked about this on the couch for months, and Andrea, and I think you and I tend to agree on this to some extent. If we want to really make an attempt at this, if we really want to get terrorism and terrorists where they are, we need to go in full force militarily, put men and women on the ground, and make a generational, not even a decade-long commitment, but really a generational commitment to several continents, to Africa, to parts of Asia, certainly to the Middle East. That's a discussion worth having.
I can't believe we agree on that one.
Right. The problem for me is that nobody's having this discussion. Everybody's saying we need to get them, but nobody's talking about what that entails. It's certainly a discussion worth having. But I really want the American people to start having it, and for everybody to stop patronizing us and saying there's some easy way to contain this threat. This threat is global. You're talking essentially about starting World War III on many different continents, and that to me is incredibly troubling. And it's a conversation that we need to have, honestly.
And I think, Sandra, you don't even need this study. I mean, if you just look at what we talk about here on Outnumbered every single day, you see over the weekend a bomb blast in Pakistan. We see what Boko Haram is doing. We see what ISIS is doing in the Middle East. We see, I mean, and on and on and on. And then we saw what happened right here in San Bernardino. We saw what happened in Boston. What is it going to take? Because we've seen it happen here on the homeland. We've seen refugees, both in California and in Texas, be arrested, yet we've seen this administration unwilling to re-examine any of it.
Well, if you listen to General Jack Keane, which I do, and Ambassador John Bolton and the likes of these very smart individuals who have looked at history and what we need to first identify the enemy, which is step number one. And Andrea, when you look at this study, as you say, it points out the obvious, and what we've been talking about on this couch for quite some time. It's predicting Islamic attacks in Europe will increase over the next 18 to 24 months. That is what this election is becoming about. People are fearful that it's going to happen there, it's going to happen here, that this is spreading. Terrorism in Africa, Judge, will expand numerically and geographically. Jihadists will expand their efforts and focus in South and Southeast Asia. I mean, these are terrifying predictions.
Yeah, part of the reason this is growing so much is basically terror groups have franchised. They're no longer an isolated group. They've sent off satellites to different countries. They're launching attacks from different countries. I mentioned before when I was on the show that in 2006, I went on a trip with the Pentagon to the Middle East, and we had military briefings. And back then, they're talking about 10 years ago, we were already aware of the fact, in these briefings they were discussing how France was in a very, very delicate state with the amount of extreme Muslim extremists that leaning towards terrorism type activities that were moving in and starting to establish footholds there.
It's been 10 years. What do you do about something like Brussels, where, you know, it's happening outside the airport? What do? You move the security checkpoint out there. Okay, well, then the target just changes. I think that we need to make sure also, and I'm going to say my little libertarian thing that everyone's going to be mad about, but we need to make sure that we don't let fear, it is something that needs to be dealt with and identified, but to be its own threat to our liberty by passing these policies. Like when they take my deodorant at the airport, I don't really think that it's helping anybody at all.
But one of the things that they made clear 10 years ago was we either fight them over there or we fight them over here. If we stop fighting them over there and say it's not our fight, we're going to come home, what we give them is the ability to establish, create a caliphate, like, as they've done, and then launch attacks to here, and that's what we're seeing.
I think that Europe is in real trouble.
They're in big trouble.
After big trouble, and it's not becoming safe to live in these cities, to be in these cities, and they're looking to the United States of America to lead on this and point out that multiculturalism and all of these lax immigration policies and open borders have failed, have completely failed, and you can't do that when you have an administration that's duplicating exactly the mistakes that they made.
All right, moving on. Hillary Clinton weighing in on the fight to replace the late Justice Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court with her lengthiest remarks on the subject yet. The Democratic frontrunner slamming Republicans for not acting on Judge Merrick Garland, President Obama's nominee to fill the vacancy. Clinton calling the standstill a make-or-break moment that is revealing the worst of our politics.
We chose a president. We chose him twice. And now Republicans in the Senate are acting like our votes didn't count and that President Obama is not still our nation's leader. I'm adding my voice to the chorus, asking Senator Grassley to step up and do his job. He should.
For his part, Senate Judiciary Chair Grassley says she was trying to divert attention from her, quote, email troubles and numerous investigations. Meantime, according to reports on the Hill, 16 Republican senators say they will meet with Garland. That's more than 25% of the GOP caucus. Is that enough, Judge?
I don't know if it's enough. I think that I'm going to be different than everybody on the couch, except probably Julie, on this one point, and that is I don't like the politicizing of the judiciary. I think it's horrible. I think that the senators should give Grassley a hearing. They don't have to confirm him. They can say thank you very much, but you know, never know. They might decide he's a good candidate. But I think that we've gotten to the point where everybody wants the most conservative Supreme Court justice or the most liberal Supreme Court justice. And the Supreme Court is a battleship. It's supposed to stay the course, and it's supposed to make small movements to the right and to the left, but it's not supposed to zigzag like the legislature does.
How does Hillary Clinton even have the guts to call Republicans divisive when she's the one who went out there and said she's proud of making enemies of Republicans?
Hold on, so let's get right to that, because here is some sound of Hillary Clinton hitting Trump and Cruz on this matter. Listen.
Now, as you know, there's a fight over whether President Obama should nominate a replacement, as the Constitution requires. And that fight is revealing the worst of our politics. The same obstructionism that we've seen from Republicans since the beginning of the Obama administration. The same disregard for the rule of law that's given rise to the extremist candidacies of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. It's corroding our democracy, and it has to stop.
And I couldn't help but notice your reaction.
She really just said disregard for the rule of law. She is Captain Disregard for the rule of law. I don't know if she knows what she's saying when she talks, or she just hopes that nobody else is listening to how ridiculous and hypocritical almost everything that comes out of her mouth is.
Well, let me just say this. I hope the Republicans are feeling super lucky. I mean, really, I hope they're feeling very lucky. I hope they're very confident that they're going to win the White House, and I hope they're very confident they're going to keep the Senate. I look at polling that says it's a 50-50 proposition at best. So they could either take the deal that's behind door number one, which is a moderate judge who they all approved unanimously for his current job. A man that somebody like Orrin Hatch said that Obama would never nominate because he's too moderate, and Obama called his bluff. Or they can gamble, and they can get President Hillary Clinton, and they can get perhaps a Democratic Senate, all of which is not preposterous, and it's actually probable according to some polls, and they can get a much more liberal justice. And then they will really change the Supreme Court for a generation, just not in the direction that they really thought they were going to change.
I agree with you completely on that. I think that I think the Republicans might have a plan B, and that plan B might be that if Hillary Clinton wins, then they're going to rush through the nomination. Except I think
Obama's going to pull it.
That's what I think.
Who says Obama's not going to pull it?
People say he won't do that. I think absolutely
Why not?
he will.
Then that's assuming. So then we should play your game, Julie. So Republicans should be contestants on Obama's Let's Make a Deal and play your game. I think Republicans should start playing their game.
Go for it.
And they're doing that, and that's exactly what they're doing. They don't have to constitutionally take up this nominee. They don't have to hold hearings if they don't want to, and that's exactly what they're doing. Where I'm going to criticize Republicans is for applying one school of thought, which is, you heard Mitch McConnell say, let the people decide on this one. Let the people also decide the Republican nomination and decide their candidate as well. Because if they don't let both of those things happen, then they're unlikely to win the White House in the fall. And I do think that if they get the White House in the fall, which is the hope, if they can unite now and stop trying to have a brokered or divided convention and let the people have their say and stop trying to steal it, then they can have their own judicial pick. But they need to start doing things their way instead of doing things the way that President Obama is baiting and calling their bluff.
But see, Andrea, I think the reason that the legislators are doing it is not because they believe in that fight. I think the reason they're doing it is to save their own skin. If they go ahead and they nominate Grassley, or they confirm Grassley, then they bought whatever he does on the Supreme Court. Whereas if they let Hillary appoint somebody more liberal, they can say it was out of my hand.
No question, it's every senator for themselves. But that is the problem within the GOP right now, that they're not operating as a cohesive unit because there's no leadership on this.
True.
All right, Judge, thanks for weighing in on that. Good to have a judge weigh in. Of all things, we hear it all the time. The U.S. is the great American melting pot. Now a new report shows just how much so. The number of immigrants and their children now numbers 61 million people. What that means for all of us next.
As President Obama pushes to bring more Syrian refugees into the U.S., a new report finds a surge in the number of immigrants in recent decades. Based on a Center for Immigration Studies analysis of government data, 1/3 of the nation's states now have immigrant populations of over 15%. And 6 of those states, California, Nevada, Texas, Florida, New York, and New Jersey, have an immigrant population over 25%. Right now, around 61 million legal and illegal immigrants and their children are living in the U.S. As recently as 1970, there were only 13.5 million immigrants and their young children in the country. And one example, California, went from 13% immigrant in 1970 to 37% last year. So, Andrea, I want to ask you, does this study give ammunition to the critics, the immigration critics, to say, hey, you know what, now we need to pull back. We need to restrict green cards. We need to restrict work permits, because the influx of immigrants that has, I think the numbers are surprising to some people, is restricting the ability of Americans living in the U.S. to get good jobs, to get higher paying wages, things like that. Do you think that argument is going to be...
You sound like Donald Trump, Judge. Has he gotten
a few minutes ago, I grabbed the 2 ladies by the arm.
Yeah, you're really, whoa.
I do think immigration has been thrust into the forefront because of exactly what you mentioned. And I think that voting bloc, the jobs voting bloc, a lot of the construction jobs that have been outsourced to illegal immigrants, that is garnering a lot of the support for someone like a Donald Trump, who's talking about the issue. And I think that you've seen other candidates like Marco Rubio try and wade into those waters and get dinged by the far right. I just think immigration is just so complicated. And the one thing that should be done first and foremost is securing the border. And I am in favor of guest worker programs. I mean, I think there needs to be more of that. And sanctuary cities. It's just such a complex issue. And when you talk about it, like a Donald Trump, you seem to get eviscerated for talking about the truth of the matter, which is we have a lot of illegals living in this country. A lot of jobs have been lost to Americans by illegal immigrants coming in this country. And this administration seems unwilling to do something about it. And we have to do something about it, because not only is it a security issue, as we see in sanctuary cities, but it's an economic issue as well.
Right. And Julie, this study actually doesn't talk just about illegal immigration. It talks about legal immigrants as well. So we're going into a whole nother tier where now the
and their children.
And their children.
And look at look at this couch. I mean, daughter of an immigrant. I think
I was born in Cuba.
You were an immigrant. I'm an immigrant. I can't speak to the 2 of you.
I was born in Michigan.
Well, welcome to New York. The Smiths probably came here in the Mayflower 7 years ago. But you know, and if you look, and then you look at this presidential field. Donald Trump, the son of an immigrant. Barack Obama, the son of an immigrant. Marco Rubio, the son of an immigrant. Ted Cruz, the son of an immigrant. Actually an immigrant himself. I'm not going to get into whether he's legally entitled to run, but was born in a different country and came here. And so consistently you have this country. That's what makes it great. And again, maybe I'm being a little biased because I'm an immigrant myself, but whether it's reflective of this couch, reflective of the leaders of this country, I mean, that's the beauty of this country. It always has been.
The difference, though, Judge, and maybe you could back this up, is that was happening at a time where states, assimilation was easier. They were able to integrate these, our parents, our grandparents, into the schools and into the systems easier. Now, with a record number of people coming into this country, there is a big question about how to handle this. As a mother of young children, I'm worried about the school system.
Well, that's
it's great to have it more open. As a libertarian, I probably have the views of the most open borders of everyone on this couch. However, you can't have open borders in this insane welfare state that we have now. It's not.
And let me just say quickly about the school, as somebody who came here as a student and had to integrate. I mean, you just come here and you integrate. You don't, I didn't try to bring my values or force them on anybody. I came here. I was said you have to speak English, so I learned English. There was no choice given to me. And yeah, I became an American, and that goes for the vast majority. That was in 1980. It wasn't so long ago. The vast majority of Americans, I think, are like that.
It's so sweet that you think 1980 wasn't so long ago.
It wasn't so long ago. It's 35 years. Well, hey, you know what? I'm still pretending I'm 25, so it's not too long ago.
And it's not 1980 anymore, sadly. Oh. All right, well, the UConn women's basketball team celebrating another victory last night, more than 70 in a row, putting them closer to a 4th straight national championship title. But now their coach is defending them. After a columnist complained their perfection is killing the game? So what's so bad about being awesome? Or could this have something to do with gender?
All right, you got to hear this. They're on the verge of winning an unprecedented 4th consecutive national title. The University of Connecticut women's basketball team making the Final Four for a 9th straight season, winning 73 games in a row. But it seems not everyone's rooting for the Huskies. After one game, Boston Globe columnist Dan Shaughnessy tweeting, UConn women beat Mississippi State 98-38 in NCAA tourney. Hate to punish them for being great, but they are killing women's game. Watch, no thanks. But their coach hit back. Listen.
We do what we do. When Tiger was winning every major, nobody said he was bad for golf. Actually, he did a lot for golf. He made everybody have to be a better golfer. And they did. And now there's a lot more great golfers because of Tiger.
Yeah, coach. Well, he went on to say only women's basketball gets this kind of negative attention, but Shaughnessy isn't backing down.
About sports is competition. You tune in wondering who's going to win. And when that's extracted, it's not for me, that's all. When Tiger Woods, it wasn't like he won every match by like 24 strokes.
Right.
And it was the thing was over before it started. There was some drama. There's no drama here. Without competition, it's performance art, and it's not a contest.
I am embarrassed that this coach is even having to defend himself.
Easy.
Wow, he should be celebrated, Judge.
Way to go, coach. Way to go. You just fight that. I think this is more offensive to me than the, those.
They're calling me old for saying that it wasn't that long ago.
No, the performance trophies. I don't like that, but it doesn't offend me. This offends me. This is telling people who do great, who excel, who work hard to get to the top. Okay, you've been at the top long enough. I didn't hear anybody saying that to Kobe Bryant and the Lakers. You've won enough. Let's let other people win.
He's basically saying, yeah, it's somebody else's turn.
But at the same time, you got to say, games, if it's a bajillion to nothing, you leave.
Yeah,
because it's not interesting anymore. So I think that's maybe what he was
You obviously never watched the Yankees in the 90s.
I did not watch the Yankees in the 90s. That's actually true. But no, I mean, like...
That's ESPN's problem. But you don't tell the players, these girls are fighting for championship.
I don't think he was honestly telling them do worse. And the Tiger Woods thing, I don't know if that applies, because I also think that anybody who's really super into golf doesn't care if things are boring or not, because golf is very boring.
Oh, my gosh. All right, so we'll just disagree on everything here, Kat Timpf. I mean, Andrea, come on.
I'm with you, Sandra. I think these girls are doing an amazing job. I think their coach, I think he should walk around with a big smile on his face. He should be proud. They should keep winning, and they should not feel a smidgen of remorse for being...
I mean, what are you worried about,
I want them to keep winning. I'm just saying it's okay to not want to watch something if you know what's going to happen.
Maybe this reporter or columnist should be a little bit more creative in covering these games, and as opposed to covering the back and forth as to whether they win or lose. Just because they're not giving him the copy that he wants doesn't make them lame. It makes him probably a bad columnist.
You know what's going to happen? He's going to tune out, and then maybe they're going to get beaten badly by another team.
Honestly, I think there should be more pressure on the other schools, the other teams, the other coaches to challenge them.
That's exactly right.
It's got to be boring for that team.
You don't bring the champions down. Everybody else has to step up their game. That's the way it works.
As somebody who played, obviously, sports in high school, you want to play against somebody who's better than you, who does make you a much better player. And everybody benefits by UConn being so great. Go UConn. I'm proud of these girls. This coach is great.
I'm proud of the girls, too. I don't hate the girls and want the girls to bomb.
We saw your true colors, Kat.
I'm just saying it's not interesting to watch stuff when you know what's
you're
going to happen.
disparaging Sandra.
You don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing. You guys are just assuming.
I can predict the future, actually.
Maybe one day a team is going to, as you point out, be even better and really crush them, and think how good that will feel.
Yeah.
That should be the goal, right? Challenge them.
But we're leaving one aspect of this out, and they are questioning whether or not this has to do with the fact that it is a women's team. I'm just throwing that out there, Kat.
Well, I don't think so. I think I've left while dudes were playing sports against each other because one of them was winning a lot. And there's beer that's cheaper elsewhere.
All right. I can say, Coach Shaughnessy, the majority of this couch is behind you. All right, more outnumbered.
Not behind him.
Well, thank you, Judge Alex, for joining us
it's
today
great to
and
be
all of
here.
your expertise. We're going to continue this on Outnumbered Overtime. What do you think we should talk about? How Kat Timpf hates UConn basketball players?
No, I hate women. That's it.
Yeah. She's a girl hater.
Yeah.
We'll continue this. We'll continue. What else should we continue? We're going to continue all of it. The Trump issue.
We'll see what people want to talk about.
Immigration. We will. Sandra, log on right now. We'll see you right there. Foxnews.com/overtime. There she is. We're logging on. We're back on TV tomorrow at noon Eastern. Happening now. Starts now.
All right. Welcome. This is Outnumbered Overtime, and that is Andrea Tantaros, and I'm Sandra Smith. We've got Judge Alex Ferrer on the couch today. Good to have you, sir.
Sorry, I miss OT, baby.
Okay. Can I give it my best? OT, baby.
That's a Vogue.
That's that was my Madonna version.
I've never seen you drop the OT, baby.
Oh my gosh! See what you've done, Judge? No, Andrea's going to
Started
tease
a new
me.
trend.
So good to have you. Everybody's logging on right now, and of course, we had just finished talking about Kat, the championship basketball team, and you're defending the need and desire for a losing team to win eventually.
I always like underdogs, but also I just get that it's boring to watch someone get creamed.
I agree with you.
Can I ask you a
It's
question?
boring.
When
I'm
was
gonna
the
change
last
the
time you
channel.
watched women's basketball and thought it was exciting anyway, even if UConn weren't playing?
Oh, wow.
We have a new girl hater.
No, not a girl. I don't like basketball or male. I think all
I
basketball
like
boring.
Dateline, and I like Toddlers and Tiaras.
Oh.
And there's always exciting stuff going on those shows. You never know what's going to happen. So that's what I prefer.
Well, so we started off the hour talking about Corey Lewandowski, the Donald Trump's campaign manager, and
Sure.
the case being brought against him.
And of course, people online only heard what they wanted to hear
It's unbelievable.
about what we said. And there was a back and forth happening because if you listen to Trump supporters, they defend Lewandowski. They still are today. And then you have the other side that believes, based on what they've seen in the video, that he did assault Michelle Fields. So one side is saying one thing, the other saying another. That is what we call a back and forth. Okay.
You know what else I love? To be clear, you know what else I love? Online, and what we're saying reflects exactly what you saw in that videotape, right? Either you want to believe that he did it, or you don't want to believe that he did it. Either you want to believe that Andrea and Julie and Kat and the judge and Sandra and everybody here are saying that he's the worst person on earth, or you don't, depending on where you are.
Right.
Why don't you just listen
None
to
of
what
us
we're
even
saying?
said either way whether we thought or didn't think.
We're
Just
so
Exactly.
said, well, what's going to happen from here going forward now that this is the reality? And I don't know.
We're
People love
we're
getting
so
mad.
polarized now. I mean, everybody picks a side, and they fight to the death for that side, even ignoring.
They don't even listen.
No, not all. When I say I'm going to be on Fox tomorrow, tune in, I get all the Fox supporters saying, yay, I'll be watching. And then I get the people who don't watch Fox
You're ruining
saying,
America.
like, oh, I can't believe you go on that network. And when I say I'm going to be on CNN, then I get the same thing.
Have you
flipped
ever
over.
noticed that those people that say that
go
they
with
hate
CNN?
Fox, they watch an awful lot of it?
Yeah. And they tweet only to people who work at Fox News.
Exactly.
All day long.
And or they say, I'm never watching Fox again. Turning off Outnumbered. And then 5 minutes later, they're like, I hate you. I know what you said. I'm like, I thought you were changing the channel.
I digress. But
Yes, we are making fun of you crazy people.
lots of people, you know, have
sick place.
things to say to Julie about our chat about immigration
Oh,
in the
bring
United
it.
States.
Why don't you read it? I loved it. The A word, the B word, the C word.
Why
I
don't we
called
get-
it all.
Oh, thanks for warning me. Julie Roginsky's on. I won't be watching
I'm
today.
watching them 30 seconds later tweeting me. I can't believe you're.
Why don't we talk about
hate
the
your
Supreme
dress.
Court?
Yes,
that's
please,
such a-
we have a judge on
What
the
I was saying was like, regardless of my politics, regardless of what I think the direction of the country should be, I separate the Supreme Court from that because I think the Supreme Court is our last barrier. You know, I mean, look, we don't trust the legislature very much. I mean, all the polls show that, and they flip all the way to one side. And personally, I like gridlocks to some extent. I prefer when a party does not have control of every facet, the Supreme Court, the presidency, the legislature, because when they do, they pass everything. They pass their entire agenda, some of which, you know, I have friends who are in each party who do not agree with some of the things that their party you know, tries to push. When you have a little bit of a split, whether it be on the court or in the legislature, then the important things are what get through, the things that everybody can agree on. But all the pet projects and all the little things that you know, you shouldn't have pushed through, those fall by the wayside.
You know what I think we always forget, and it's to your point about the court, and it's actually to the point that we just talked about with Twitter and whatever else you want to see about the Trump tape. There are a lot of normal people out there that we just don't talk to on a daily basis. Like, I have a very good friend who lives in Connecticut. He is a registered Republican who happens to be devastated about what's going on with this nomination this year, and probably is going to vote for Hillary. And again, you know, and a lot of his friends feel the same way. And we sometimes forget that there are real people out there, Democrats who hate Hillary, who might vote for Trump because they don't like her. But we're so polarized, and the voice is shouting loudest, especially when it comes to the court. Right. Especially in our political system, on TV, online, are the people who are so polarized that it makes you think the whole country's that polarized. And it's not. And anecdotally, I just don't think that's the case.
No, that's true. And I've always felt that on the left, you have the extreme left who thinks that every Republican is a cold-hearted, who wants to throw Granny over the cliff. And then on the right, you've got the extreme right that thinks every Democrat wants to give away everything that the hardworking Americans earn to people who don't want to work. And then when you get away from those extremes, you've got Democrats and Republicans that are closer to the middle who are perfectly fine with helping people who are poor and need help. They just don't want to be taken advantage of and have people who are, you know, well enough to work just basically riding the coattails of everybody else. And it doesn't matter what party they're on. So you're right. We hear from the extremes, and that's what forces the discussion.
And they drive the discussion, right?
Yeah.
People like Kat with her strong opinions.
I do have strong opinions. I think it's good to have strong opinions.
Yeah, why do you hate the Yankees?
I'm a Tigers fan.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah. I'm from Detroit.
Yeah,
so I'm a Tigers fan. I don't hate the Yankees. I'm going to go on Monday.
Oh.
I like fun events. I like to be social every now and then, a few weeks or so.
Okay, so ask Judge Alex, this is Bill Otis, if he thinks Hillary will be indicted or if the Obama administration will sweep it under the rug.
I don't know. I mean, the answer, I think that there's enough there to certainly bring up the question of indictment, but I haven't seen what evidence they have just based on the stuff that's leaked out. Because remember, there were 30-some-odd thousand documents that she just threw out, that she said, no, those were personal. And we have to take her word for it that they're personal. Maybe the FBI, in screening this server, was able to extract some of those, and there might be some documents there that were thrown out because they had confidential stuff.
But you have to go back to the idea that either she exchanged this confidential information knowingly or negligently. Right. So isn't there a crime committed either way?
Yes, there is, but there are two different statutes, and the elements for the statutes are slightly different. So what I do believe is that I believe that with 147, I don't know, the numbers have been questioned now, but if there are 147 FBI agents on this investigation, this is a serious investigation. I mean, even if they're trying to speed it up, what do? You double the number? If you have 75 FBI agents on your investigation, it's a serious investigation. It's not a, oh, they're just doing this because, you know, it's their protocol to check and make sure there weren't any security violations. No. This is a serious criminal investigation. Now, it may not be her. It may be that they get somebody else. I mean, the fact that they flipped the IT guy, you know, the Department of Justice doesn't give immunity to people just for, oh, why don't we just give him immunity and see what he has to say? Typically, they sit down with a lawyer and say, what's the proffer? What's he going to give us? And then they grant immunity. So somebody is the target. I don't know if it's Hillary or if it's Abedin or if it's Mills or somebody, you know.
Or all of them.
But look at that
or
question.
An underling.
But
because it's not uncommon to have somebody fall on the sword for everybody.
But look at that question, though, because essentially the question assumes that she's clearly guilty, and either they're going to indict her or they're going to sweep it under the rug. Is it possible, and I'm actually not asking this from a political point of view, from a legal point of view, that despite all the anecdotal evidence that we've seen, that there's legally not a case that they can make, that they can get with certainty and convict on, and so that they don't choose to refer to the Justice Department for an indictment? I mean, is it possible?
It's certainly possible. And I think if they don't refer it to the Justice Department for an indictment, or if they refer it to the Justice Department and the Justice Department does not indict, then I think we're going to hear it, because the FBI agents are going to come out of the woodwork, and you're going to have a big uproar. If they don't refer it, then, you know, I mean, there are going to be people out there who are going to say, oh, this is political. You know, they swept it under the rug, and that's just not the case. The FBI, you know, you've got too many agents involved at too many levels, and a lot of reputations at stake.
And there's also, it seems to me, like a time period, because typically they wouldn't indict in the fall. They never indict in advance of an election, right? So if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen before the summer. No, I think it's going to happen now if it's going to happen, because I don't think I think the reason they're speeding it up is they don't want this specter hanging over the election. Right. You know, I think they want to rush it. But by the way, if they don't indict, it doesn't, you know, there's a difference between not having enough to prosecute and a person being innocent. You know, I mean, they may think, you know, there's something here, whether it's with regard to the emails, or whether it's with regard to the foundation, or whatever. They may think there's something there, but not have enough evidence to prove it beyond every reasonable doubt, in which case they don't bring the case.
All right, awesome to have you, Judge. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Judge.
Julie and Kat.
It's always great seeing you.
All right, good stuff. We'll see you back on the live version, Outnumbered, tomorrow at noon.